Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Come on, this is interactive. Let's go. All right, getting started. So yes, I'm Zach Hayes. I was the VP of Product at Building Connected, which is a startup here in the city. We made software for the construction industry. We got acquired for $285 million by Autodesk earlier this year. So it was a good exit for us. We were excited. And now I've taken over more of the construction suite at Autodesk. I run a big product team globally, about 65 people across product and design. But today I'm talking about how we can simplify things. So anyone recognize these guys? You know who these are? Yeah? Does anyone know what game they're playing? 3D chess. Technically tri-D chess, but I'll count that, 3D chess. So when I used to think about product strategy, this is what I would think about. Spock staring at the complex game, supposedly the most complex game in the universe, thinking about all the moves, the strategy in his head, what the competitor is going to do, all these frameworks probably going through his mind, just kind of genius level stuff that I couldn't understand. Just too complex, too much going on in product strategy. This seemed really daunting, it seemed tough. But as I progressed through my career, I realized it doesn't have to be hard. It can be quite simple. So today we're going to talk about clarifying what is a vision versus a strategy versus a roadmap. Then we're going to dig into elements of a product strategy and 5 steps that you all can take to define a great product strategy. All right? Vision versus strategy versus roadmaps. So vision, really what you want to think of is it's your North Star. It's where you're going, it's aspirational, it's way out there. It doesn't even have to be attainable anytime soon. It's just something that sort of gives you the direction of where you think things are going. At Building Connected, from day one, this was our vision statement. We wanted to be the network that connects every business and professional in architecture, engineering, and construction. And by network, we mean like LinkedIn. So we want to be the LinkedIn of all these companies. Because construction is so collaborative, they used our software on the new Warriors Stadium, and there was over 1,000 companies had to come together to collaborate and build that. We thought a network opened up a lot of opportunity. So this was our vision. Could we ever connect every single person to this? Probably not, but it's North Star, it's aspirational, it's simple. Okay, make sense? Nodding, yes, good. All right, what is a strategy? So strategy I like to think of is it's the major landmarks along the way towards your vision. So think of major things, destinations along the way that you're going to go move your product towards, move your company towards, to go make those major steps. They're also fairly aspirational. These are big objectives, but they are sequenced and they should be achievable. And the thing about a landmark is you might, see a path that makes sense towards the next landmark, but there's also a million other ways you could divide your team and get there. The key is it's something out in attainable in the distance so you can go get. So we'll give you an example here. Building Connected, this was our strategy. We had 3 landmarks that built upon each other to get towards our vision. The first one was build a network of contractors through bid management. So the bidding process is when a general contractor, usually the project manager, will invite subcontractors to bid on the different trades, the concrete, the electrical, et cetera. And there's a ton of people involved in this process because it's kind of a selection, soliciting, trying to get these bids back. We knew that was a good spot to start to build a large network around. Once we got there, we wanted to grow a thriving SaaS business on top of that, then expand into new marketplaces. So these were our huge landmarks that we're going to try to tackle. Vision, strategy, your landmarks. The roadmap is a bit more detailed. It's the individual projects you're going to do along the way towards your next landmark. The good thing about these projects is some of them might be clever. This could propel you quite well down towards your next landmark. Might work. save you some time. Some things are going to completely fail, but that's okay on your roadmap. It's projects, it's experiments. This is where you're going to do your experimentation. Everything is trying to push you towards your next landmark, and it's okay if you change your roadmap. But you want to keep your strategy as stable as possible as you're moving towards the next big objective. All right, how do these all fit together? So your company should have a vision. Hopefully all of you, your company does have a vision, and you can articulate that. And the company also should have a strategy. At Build Unconnected, we had 3 strategy statements that I just said, which are supported by the products. And each product should have a product vision. Each product would then have product strategy. And for some products, like at Autodesk, we have products that have been around for 30 years. AutoCAD, this huge product that's used by millions and millions of people. Each feature has to have its own vision and its own strategy. So this tiers down, down, down. Cool? Making sense? Simple, right? Okay, so vision versus strategy versus roadmaps. We're thinking about destination versus landmarks and all the projects along the way that are going to get you there. And then we'll dig into what are the elements of a product strategy. Okay, so many of you, I'm sure, have seen this, that a great strategy is really how you're going to create desirable value that you can feasibly create and that is viable for your business. So everyone's probably heard these terms, but let's break down kind of what they mean in practice. Building connected, we thought what was desirable, and we call this our value promise to our users, was quite simple. Never have to manage a contact database again. So if you're inviting if you need 1,000 companies come work with you on the Warriors Stadium, some of them had to be small businesses, some of them had to be minority-run businesses because of city ordinances. To get that many people to participate and give you a qualified bid, you have to actually invite tens, 20,000s of people. And the contractor that did that's actually not from the Bay Area. So to do this, just to build up a contact database was a challenge for them. And it's not the biggest challenge in the world, but this was challenging. And we thought this is a way that we could provide something desirable. What was feasible for us is to build a great bid management experience. A SaaS-based product to manage this process. We knew that we had the capabilities to design a great experience. It was underserved in the contractor market, so that was something we knew we could do feasible. And we thought what was viable as a business was building this network of subcontractors, because then we could provide tools to those subcontractors and start to stack these strategies on top of each other. So that was desirable, feasible, viable. And that all leads into our first strategy statement. So it's simple, it only has a few words there, but it really encompasses something that was desirable, feasible, and we believed was viable. And then we stacked another thing that we thought, because we had a network, we could easily grow a thriving SaaS business. We thought that was desirable because we had great ideas for different software services the subcontractors needed. We knew we could build that stuff, and we thought that was viable from a monetization standpoint. And then there was ways to expand from there. Making sense? All right, another example. Uber. So what they thought was desirable, you could say was something like easy access to private black cars. So these were a thing that already existed. If you had someone's contact information, you could call them up and they could pick you up in a nicer car. It was an alternative to taxis, usually a little more expensive. Uber made these really accessible. That was their first play. They thought this was feasible because they could make an app that was great to hail, track, and pay for these things. Viable was that they started building up a network of these black car drivers and therefore a network of consumers that were going to be using these. Build a business around it. You could argue whether the business is viable now or not, but someday maybe they'll get profitable. Okay. And that then led them to open up their second strategy, which was a cheaper alternative to black cars and taxis. They knew this was feasible because they could reuse the same app to hail and track and pay for these things and tap in that same consumer network. And this was going to be viable for them because now they could even expand their footprint as a business. This was a viable business into ride sharing, and they built a giant network of ride sharing drivers. Okay, making sense? You could imagine their strategy statement, if you put it on one slide, might look something like this. Sign up customers via a great black car experience, and then their next landmark, drive down prices with ride sharing, and then once they got there, they expanded into new marketplaces like Uber Eats. And then I'm sure they have something else, and then I'm sure they have something else, right? Okay. So that's an example from the consumer market, which describes desirable, feasible, viable. But we're going to dig into how you, all as enterprise B2B PMs, can define a great product strategy. So step one, for your product, if you don't have this already, get together with your team and craft a vision. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be short and it should be aspirational. So remember, this is your North Star as a team. And whether this is you're a startup and you need this at your company level, you don't have it yet, you're working on a product where you need a product, or even down to just the feature scrum team, there should be a vision for where you're going, and it should make sense in the context of what your company is doing. So this should be simple. If you don't have this already, just collaborate with your team and get something going. Like I said, it should be aspirational. All right, then you want to think about, as your company and your product, what is your moat? Like a castle, a good product strategy, a good company strategy needs a defense. The castle's defense is the moat. So how would you build this moat? At Building Connected, we thought our moat was the network that we built, and so far that's been holding up. So great ideas are easy to copy, and what makes you hard to copy? Some common defensible strategies in B2B are network effects. So Building Connected is one of them. LinkedIn, another one. Economies of scale. This is when you have grown so big that you can drive down the cost of production. So you can think of Amazon, Boeing's a good one. High switching costs is very common in enterprise. Once someone's locked into your ecosystem, like Salesforce, it's really hard to then switch to a competitor. Microsoft has been good at this forever. And brand loyalty is one that people forget about in enterprise, but it's also important. If somebody trusts your brand, trust that if they're starting a company, that they're going to go to you. So AWS might have this, and you can see Amazon actually is up in probably in every single one of these categories. It's highly defensible. So these should be something familiar to a lot of you. One thing I like to remind my team is things that are not defensible. A great user experience is important. It's something I'm super passionate about myself, but it's not actually a defensible strategy. So make sure that you're thinking about that. There's always ways to copy UX, and it's very hard to have sustained strategy of we're always just going to be the best UX. Features. Obviously, you have to build features. Your customers are going to leave you if you don't continue to add value, but that's not actually a defensible strategy. It's just something you need to do to continue to push people to your next destination. And being first is not actually a defensible strategy. Often the first one wins, but there's so many times when you can think of Airbnb. Couch surfers were definitely there first, but Airbnb, you could say, won that market. So being there first doesn't actually sustain a strategy. It's just a nice to have. Okay? So identify your moat after you have a vision, and then align on your next landmark. So most of you are not starting your companies from scratch like we did at Building Connected. That's okay. Just figure out what's next, or what are you actively working on, and you don't have to do months of analysis and figuring out what the competitors are doing and what is viable in your marketplace. Just kind of collectively think about how can you summarize the objective that we're all working on right now, and make sure that it is something desirable, that you can describe what is the value promise to the user, figure out why your team can feasibly execute on that, and why is it viable for your business. Then sequence from there. Like I showed with Building Connected, and then we did with Uber, sequencing can be very powerful to kind of show where you are going with your landmarks and how they're going to propel you to your next destination. It's also a very popular way in the marketplace to describe strategies, and it's worked for some very successful companies. This was the strategy statements for a company that many of you probably know, Netflix, right? So before streaming was a term. Netflix always wanted to get big on DVDs and then lead in downloads or streaming, which is where they landed, then expand everywhere, and then original content, and then something else, et cetera. But these were the first three things they were working on. And their former head of product, Gib Biddle, has tons of content on product strategy, some great talks. I would definitely recommend looking up some of his stuff if you want to dig deeper. Here's another one. So this was on their website very early on. Create a low volume car, which will necessarily be expensive, then a less expensive medium volume car, and then use that money to create an affordable high volume car. Who's this? Tesla, right? So this simple sequencing has driven a lot of companies, and it helps both their investors and the outside community understand what they're doing, but more importantly, their teams. Their teams are always highly clear on what the objectives were and in what sequence. So sequence things out. You've got a vision, you understand how your moat's going to work, you're aligned on your next landmark and started thinking about some sequences after. Super importantly though, does this actually help you say no? So what do we mean by that? We launched our first product for subcontractors at Building Connected. We called it Bidboard. And what it does is it helps subcontractors track all these bids that we were creating on our network. We thought that was a nice CRM type functionality. We knew it solved a problem, but our strategy looked something like this, or specifically this. Make Bidboard valuable to individual users. We thought that was a good place to start. And then we were going to make Bidboard great for teams. So once someone has adopted individually, share it across your teams. We've seen that work in a lot of businesses. And then make it transformative for their whole company. So kind of this land and expand idea. We thought that was a great way to start. The problem was this didn't help any of our internal teams say no to the millions of great ideas that we had. So we were getting these conversations and say, okay, what does an individual find valuable? And someone would say, oh, file management is a great thing, or being able to use OCR to read all these bid invitations coming in, or messaging, like all these things that felt like individual value were extremely disconnected. And so we didn't actually have a landmark that we were all going towards. It was just a scattering of ideas, and we had a list of 95 features that we could build, and there was no theme. They were all good for individuals, but they weren't actually driving us all towards a big landmark. So we had to fix this. This is what we came up with. We decided to start by trying to replace Excel as the system that subcontractors use to track their bids. We knew this was extremely common, and we figured this was a good starting point because it's just table stakes. So we aligned everybody, let's just figure out what we could do to solve this problem. This was our first landmark. And then we said we have a bunch of great ideas also out there, but we'll do those next. And those are going to be about file management. So getting them to move all their files to the cloud. And then all those great ideas around messaging and task tracking. We want to replace Outlook and sticky notes as ways that they're tracking their tasks and activities and communicating internally with their teams. So this was a way to just kind of organize all these great ideas in a sequence that we thought was logical. And each of these, we believe, has a value promise that is desirable. Each of them is something that we can feasibly do. Each of them is something that we can viably do as a business as well. We're able to monetize each of these, and they build upon each other. And then we'll have 4, 5, 6 as we get there. Making sense? Okay, so 5 fairly simple steps. Craft a vision with your team. It should not take you that long. Just get in a room and do it together. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can change it later if you want to wordsmith things. Identify your moat. Just think about what makes you hard to copy and how that's going to be sustainable in the long run. Align on your next landmark. Hopefully a couple more after that. 3 is always a nice grouping of them. And then think about, will this actually help us say no to all the great ideas that we're going to come up with, our customers are going to ask for, our sales team is going to push for. This helps a lot when sales comes and says, hey, what about that messaging thing customer wants? Be like, you know our strategy. It's on that one slide. You've seen it a million times. So once you've got that, you're still kind of stuck in this, is this a good strategy? You know, you didn't do all the years-long research and all the competitive analysis, and you don't have a 50-page strategy document. You're not really sure. You don't feel like a strategy expert. You're not Spock playing tri-D chess. Is this a good strategy? So this was me often. This might be you. You don't know, right? Is it good? Is it not good? It's hard to tell. So think about strategy as a team sport. If you're doing this by yourself, you are bound to fail. You are the product manager. It's your responsibility to get it done, but it is not your responsibility to do it all by yourself. Bring along everyone else with you, especially sales, marketing, the teams that really count on what you're going to do. The sooner you bring them in, the more bought in they're going to be, and the more confident you can be like, hey, this is starting to resonate. So you got a few of you, and you're thinking, yeah, maybe this is working. You wordsmith a couple of things, it's looking a little better. The three of you get aligned, feeling, hey, this is good. Then start rolling it out to the rest of the company and get everyone aligned. So, all right, closing thoughts. We talked about vision, being your destination, the strategy, is those big landmarks along the way. There's multiple ways to get to those landmarks, but you really want to try to focus your team on something specific one at a time. And then the roadmap's all the crazy projects you're going to try along the way to get you there. These are the 5 things you can do to create a great strategy. And a 6th one I want to add as a closing thought is once you've done this, you've brought your team along for the ride, they are bought in on it, you have to tell everybody all the time, always. That is why we like how these fit on one slide. One vision statement, one strategy slide. We show these all the time. All hands, every team meeting, every sprint planning meeting. We show these all the time. Our teams can recite them. Then when they have decisions, should I build that feature or that feature? Should I cut that corner or optimize this? They always know, does this fit into the strategy? Maybe I should do this now. Maybe I should wait later. So tell everybody all the time. It's an alignment tool. It will help you as a product manager. It'll help you with sales so much. If sales knows this and can recite it and start telling customers your strategy, it's even better. All right, so with that, simple, and now it's your turn. I think we have 4 minutes or so to ask any questions if you guys have them. Happy to. Question way in there in the back. I'll repeat it since you don't have a mic.
What's the most important part about messaging the product to like sales and marketing and the customer success teams? Like you're doing your sprints, your meetings. When and how are tactics to get that message to those different departments?
Yep. So the question was, what's some tactics to help disseminate this with teams outside your group, sales, marketing, et cetera? Good summary. Right? Yep. Any chance you can get when you're collaborating with those teams, go over these. You could have lunch with them. You could just be passing them in the hallway. Because we keep things so short and simple, I do this a lot. In a status update, the first part of an email might be, hey, I know you guys are wondering what the status is on that one deliverable. Here's a reminder of our vision and our strategy. Here's the information you actually wanted. So there's lots of ways to sneak this in all the time. Just cut and paste it from wherever you have it in every document you possibly can, which is why it's short and simple. People get familiar. They see it over and over and over. Then they can repeat it over and over and over. So just find any deliverable to sneak that into. Question over here. Sorry. What do you know? How do you decide when to pivot? When to change your strategy? So you have to constantly be reevaluating, is this strategy still something that we want to go to? And the way that we do that is we try to come up with metrics, qualitative or quantitative, that kind of guide us and say, is this strategy something that we're still going towards that landmark, and is this still viable for our business? So we often look at retention, ARR, those types of things because we are a subscription business. Are we actually increasing new ARR? Are we increasing net retention? Is 2 things that we look at. And can we attribute it to those strategy statements? That's one reason why we would pivot. And then the second reason is if it's not helping our teams to make decisions, which we did with Bidboard. Too many options, too many people disagreeing on what we should build next. It wasn't really a pivot, but it was a reshaping of our strategy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I was hoping more for like, hey, we should have it last for, you know, a quarter, or we should at least put like a benchmark of like, let's see how long this takes to update, those kinds of things. But yeah.
Yeah, so to clarify, she was looking for how long might you go down one of these paths before you decide, okay, this didn't work. And that's really unique to what level you're talking about. If it's your company and your Autodesk, you should not be reevaluating strategy on a quarterly basis. That would really be disruptive. Though at Building Connected, we were small, there was 10 of us, we could do things frequently. We could always reshift, and that's kind of the superpower of a startup. So it's how flexible can you be and how much tolerance would your customers have if you didn't deliver on your commitments for the year. You had a question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you have a really solid strategy, like at the company level,
Mm-hmm.
but you're trying to map that, or like help teams map what they're doing in the product visions and strategies that they put together to the overall company strategy, do you have any tactics for like empowering teams to do that effectively?
Yeah, so the question was, how do you help the teams, if you do have a strong strategy at the top level of a company, how do you help the individual teams craft the next level vision and strategies? The way that we do it is similar to, have you guys seen ICE, where you can rate a bunch of features based on impact, certainty, and effort? So we do a similar thing where we rate all of our features. We'll get in a room and rate them independently and say, are they meeting objectives for the business, and are they aligned with specific company strategies? So an example might be, we're looking at a list of 15 features, and we want everyone to rank, are they going to drive new ARR? Are they going to help reduce churn? Are they going to drive the company strategy of XYZ? And do we think that we can build them? Well, what's the effort to build them? So we have everybody rank those independently. We come back together to discuss as a team and figure out, why did you think that would drive so much ARR, but it would be so hard? I thought that would be fairly easy, and start to have that discussion. And in that sort of workshop environment, things start to fall out where the teams say, okay, this is something that drives our business objectives and is strategically aligned, and we actually think we can feasibly do. That's an exercise that we do. I think I got 30 seconds, so that's a short one.
On the flip side, other than run away,
Yeah.
what if the company doesn't have a vision or a new strategy from your executive team? What do you think the product team can do to help influence and point them in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it is up to the product team to drive the product strategy. So starting to get them in a room and do exercises like the one I just described and figure out what are the business priorities that we need to go solve, and just start interviewing them. There is a strategy in someone's head, and it's often just ill-defined. So I think it's up to you guys as PMs to add that clarity and focus, because your founders, your executives, there's something in their heads that they're just not saying, and maybe they're not all aligned with each other. So you can be the conduit to kind of bring people together and have these discussions and then simplify things. And that was a great question to end on. So I will let Ryan come up next and enjoy the rest of the day.